next hand, you're still eight-handed. This is hand number 47, and this is, definitely the most talked about hand of the entire final table, if not the entire World Series of Poker 2017. Go ahead and take it through us. This was a 156 million chip pot, I believe. I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, this was the hand of the tournament for me for sure. You know, Coming in, I'd never played with John Hess up until the final table. I'd heard of him, I'd seen him on TV. We'd done a little bit of research, but I never actually played with the guy. So early on, I realized he was there, and he wasn't shy. He wasn't letting the moment get a hold of him. He was there to play poker. So I'm under the gun, a position I wasn't really planning on playing too many hands with all these a couple short stacks and a bunch of good players behind, and I just looked down at two aces. So, pretty good feeling getting that hand at the final table in the main event. So I go ahead and raise it up, and everyone folds. If you remember, Brian was on the button, tanking quite a long time, and I was like, wow, okay, so I'm gonna. Hopefully Brian makes a move or three bets, but unfortunately he folded, and that was at the time I remember being pretty disappointed.
Yeah.
But it folds to John in the big blind, and he decides to see a flop. So we take a flop, and just the old ace 5 7 rainbow flop, like I drew it up. You can't ask for anything better. But at the same time, it's interesting because while I'm really happy that I have a hand that is probably not going to lose, it's tough because what can John have now that can really get a lot of chips in? I have all the good cards. There's only one ace left, and I'd be pretty fortunate for him to have it, but I wasn't sure that he would. So I elect to get a little tricky here, and I decided to check back the flop, hoping to let John catch up a little bit, maybe make a pair, maybe make a straight draw, and try to get some value on later streets. So the turn's the 10 of spades, and John checks, and now we're trying to build a pot. So I bet, on the larger side, I guess about half pot, and that's when I can't believe my eyes. He decides to check raise to 7 million, and I am doing cartwheels in my head at this point because we had a conversation. He had mentioned a couple times throughout the final table how he was advised to not really mess with me too much, not to play big pots with me. We were the two biggest stacks at the table by far, and it was good advice that he received, honestly, because he shouldn't be trying to tangle with me too much, just because we both have a lot of chips. So there's a bunch of short stacks, and every time someone busts, you make a lot of money. So when he check raises me on this board, I just kind of knew that he had it. And, normally my play is to just call here, just to, keep some, keep some bluffs in his range, like king, queen, queen, jack. I don't want him to, raise and then fold and not realize that river bet. And against a lot of people, I probably would. But, I just knew John was strong here, and I decided to put in another raise. And he shot up out of his chair and did a little spin, and I heard the two words that I couldn't believe I was about to hear, and they were just all in, and I called, and once I confirmed that he was drawing dead, I just, I ran over to my rail, and I couldn't believe what just happened.
Yeah, I mean, describe that feeling of when you're sitting there, you have the absolute nuts, and then when he flips over his cards, you see he's absolutely drawing dead. He doesn't have a single out. I mean, is there any way you can describe that feeling there?
No, I don't think I could really put it into words. I don't want to try to do it injustice because, um, yeah, it was just, I guess, euphoria, right? Like you just, and at the same time, the truth is that I was, the whole thing is just a blur, right? Like you're in the moment, you're enjoying it, you're playing, but you can't really explain what it's like to win that kind of pot in this stage. I don't want to try to, use words to describe what was just probably the best moment of my life.
Yeah. How did you feel about John Hesp's play overall? I mean, everyone, as a person, everybody loved him. How was his play overall compared to the other competitors?
Yeah, I thought John played well. I really do. I mean, look, poker's a game where everyone can kind of say what they want and everyone can kind of be judgmental about someone else's play. But at the end of the day, if you have a strategy and you're, playing it the way you want to play, I have no problems with that. And that's what John was doing. He was using a little bit of pot control, a little bit of speech play, and he was getting into people's heads. And look, he final tabled the main event, the World Series of Poker main event. I mean, you got to give the guy credit. He was doing something right. So that's the way I see it. And this hand specifically, everyone was kind of saying how, two pair, they wouldn't get in two pair and all that. But honestly, I don't really see it. I think that it's a tough situation for anyone to be in. He had top two pair on a dry board. I mean, that's a really good hand, and obviously in hindsight, should he call? Probably, but that's a tough one. I don't think he should hold his head too low for that hand whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of armchair quarterbacking that goes on out there, and people can always, in hindsight, look and say, well, when you made the three bet on the turn there, you have to have the nuts. There's no other hand you could possibly have. But
Hmm.
when you're sitting there, and I mean, and again, the question too is what happens. So let's say he does just call, then what are you going to do on the river? And I mean, is he really going to save any of his chips anyway when you shove on the river?
Exactly, and the thing, John doesn't claim to be some poker wizard. He didn't claim to be some professional poker player. He was an amateur. He knows that, and for an amateur, that's a tough situation to be in. I mean, I've spent 5 years in this game trying to get to the point where maybe I could get away from ace ten there. I don't even think I would. So it's difficult, and it's just poker at the end of the day, and that ace ten's a really good hand, so it's tough.
Yeah, yeah, it was just very unfortunate for him, and
Yeah.
very fortunate for you. But hey, we've all been on both sides of that if you play poker long enough. So I don't ever feel bad about it when I put a bad beat on someone or something like that because I know it goes both ways.
Absolutely. It's
So
all about timing, though. You got to time your time your coolers well. You want
yeah,
to.
yeah, that's right.
I've definitely been cooler myself, but
Yeah.
thankfully it wasn't on this stage.
Yeah, it's
So
kind of nice when it doesn't happen when you're playing for $8 million.
yeah.
Yeah.